Hey, welcome back to Communication Research Methods class. This is Bram Duffee, and today we're talking about the informational interview. And you have an assignment that asks you to interview a leader or a mentor. I want to suggest that this is the perfect opportunity to gather information about your future career. And so I want to talk to you about an informational interview together because the goal is to be able to serve two purposes. One is for you to be able to make contacts with people in the industry of what you want to do someday. And the second thing is for you to be able to answer the research question that we're working working for as a class. The way it works is that the current project that you're doing, the interview project, will serve as a pilot study that will feed into the final research project. And all of these will involve informational interviews. So when you're not interviewing for a specific job, but you are discussing your future career or making connections with someone that has the relevant experience that you're looking for, this is the kind of thing that's an informational interview. And an informational interview is a golden opportunity for you to learn more about a field that you may have some already experience there with, but gosh, being able to reality test and figure out the gel of how these puzzle pieces work together between you, yourself, and how you see other people go through these kinds of experiences. You're gonna learn how to best market yourself to potential employers a little bit there because you're doing some frontline market research with the consumers of that unique product, which is you. So they may not hire you someday, but they might know the person that does. So learning at least about your field to make those connections, to find out about their life, can help you as you move into a position maybe someday like that soon. So people who are currently working in your intended field can give you unbiased, up-to-date information on how practical the move you're anticipating really is, or if it meets your expectations. So an informational interview is not a job interview. The reason that you've been granted some time by that executive or by that potential mentor person is probably because you've assured them that you're not going to ask them for a job. It's like you both know that you're interested in their company or you're interested in that field, but you're there under the official premise that your intended information is to understand about them, understand about the industry, understand about the job, about similar companies, about the field in general, but not to put pressure of employment on them. So how do you find people to connect with? How do you figure out who can help? And there's a couple main sources of names for informational interviewing. If you're going to get someone, I would say that one is that you could search through and look out to find people who are on the internet, right? That have job titles, doing the job that you want to do someday, and you can email them. And that is certainly a great way to do it, especially because the interviews you're going to do are going to be conducted through Zoom. The reason you do those through Zoom is so that you can take advantage of the automatic transcription. Those details are in the assignment. But the personal contacts network is really the best route because I say it's the best way to give a warm welcome to the other person. The fact that you know someone that knows that other person is much more comfortable than being just some student out of the blue, to be able to make that connection. So you might even think about people who know other people in your life. So your friends' parents, or going through your phone list and thinking about who else would know people that would know that other person. There's a game out there about how many people just are we removed from each other, but people will often talk to you. And I would say that the nice thing is that people who are doing the work in their fields commonly are in a position to want to share, to share. And so you're going to be picking 3 or 4 people. And so when you are finding these folks, I would say that scheduling is going to have to just find a way to work out, and the time is going to be tight. So I would stick with the easy person to nab for your pilot study, but maybe save some of those best names that your friends give you for the pass the pilot study, because you're going to have to also be ready with other folks to interview for the final part of the assignment when you do the final assignment, because you're going to have one person to interview during the interview project, but then multiple when we get to the final. So how do you get that person to see you? I would suggest first you flatter and then you ask for advice. So some people love both, and both those should be sincere. So you might tell someone, or you might email someone, I've been impressed with the way that you've done this with your career. Do you have 20 minutes to spare where you could give me some advice, because I'm interested in your field and I'm a student at Kennesaw State? Those kinds of things. Is there a chance I could talk to you briefly about the benefit of working in your field? I'm a student. These are things that can help you score an informational interview. And so it's like, when you find that person, we want them to understand that you just want to interview them for school. And then more than that, you want to meet them as a person. More than that, you want to get to the root of some of your questions that would lead to your research study, right? So all these are multiple goals. We're not just coming in for one thing. And with the different kinds of questions that we talked about before, we have gone through already how to set up the interview itself and a good way to mix planned questions. But through all that, we have to understand that there is a need to be able to make the participant comfortable. And so the key is to ask open-ended questions to get them talking, and that's going to help you learn more as the conversation goes on. And that approach makes the chat more interesting and reveals deeper insights. So one of the best questions that you can ask is just simply, tell me more about that, right? Those kinds of developmental questions invite people to share more details, and they lead to valuable answers to what you're trying to see, which is usually a rich description, a rich understanding of what's going on. I'm going to find my notes. When we do the informational interview, let's talk about some goals. The first thing is that we want to establish a rapport with the interviewer. So get to know who they are and get them to know who you are. And at the same time, make your objective clearly known. So it's good to be able to introduce yourself, find out a little bit about that other person, and establish personal contact with the interviewer in some way that's a personal, genuine interest. It is so nice to be able to do that fast and up front, because you don't want to make the person feel like you're wasting time, right? So if you can find that connection, then it allows for a sincere, constructive attitude to be developed quickly on. And also on your part, listening skills are really critical in building rapport. So you want that because you want the person to like you, you want their help with what you're doing. After that, the goal here is to give and receive information, right? So think about your interviewer that you're doing the informational interview with as a person that you're establishing a professional relationship. This is a lot different than just like a contact person that you have. This is more like someone that's a source of information. And more specifically, you're seeking information about your job market. So the more information that you can accumulate, the more knowledge that you're going to have. Knowledge is power. So the more you have, the more easily things are going to be for you in this assignment and for your connection with this person. If you come out of your informational interview with more information than you went in with, then well, you've had a successful interview. So that's the goal. So those aspects of getting there and making a positive connection are important. And then after that, we can go into the research interview guide that has been developed. So all of the interviews have prefab interview questions, and all of those are going to be working to serve the research question. And the research question that we're working on in this class is, how does your communication with your boss influence your job satisfaction and motivation? So that research question that we have is the same one that we're working on as a class. And so you're interviewing one person as well as other folks are in class. And we'll use the information from that to serve as our pilot study that will feed into our final research project later on. So when we're figuring out what questions can get us to this answer, the interview guide sort of bounces around and helps us develop this out. The research question again was, how does your communication with your boss influence your job satisfaction and motivation? So I would suggest that we pick apart these topics with the potential interviewer. So what we're at so far is that in this informational interview, we've focused on the fact that we have worked to establish rapport, we have given and received information, and we began work on the interview guide, which are the prefab questions that we have. The questions that you develop for yours and the pilot study time are going to be used later to help us develop new ones for the next study. The other purpose of the informational interview is for you to be able to build your network, because the person that you're going to be talking to is someone who has been where you've been at before, and they know where you're going, and they know what it takes to get there. And so in almost every case, you can come out of an interview with the names of more people that you could contact that are like them. Now, an exception to this might be if maybe the person wants to consider you for their organization to hire you. But we have to recognize that when you're doing an informational interview, there is that potential there. The last thing to mention about this is that we want to be memorably favored by the interviewer. So that means asking for permission to keep them informed about their progress. These kinds of things might be not only welcomed but appreciated. So every interviewer, having become part of your new contact network, now has a stake in your success. I don't know about you, but all of us feel good about contributing to someone else's achievement. And so over time, the thoughts and ideas that might influence you might come to the interviewer's mind, and they want to share it with you. So it's like they think about you 3 months later because of some interaction that they have. You want them to have your contact information. You want them to have that positive feel-good feel. So a lot of what we talked about so far is the fact that you want to be able to score informational interviews with people, and you want to develop rapport quickly. You want to make them feel good about the contact with you. And then, of course, go through your interview guide of questions for the research that we're working on. And then, as I said, asking about referrals. Who else do they know? You know, you're in a position where you have to do a few interviews. So asking that person for a referral for another person can be really helpful. So what are some questions that you can ask? The primary job is to listen during informational interviews, but what is the field like? Is the field growing? Is it stable? Is it declining? Where's the field going in the short term? Where is it going in the long term? What's compensation like? How much money would I expect that I could make coming out of school? How did you get started? What was this like for you? What are some new developments that you see coming down the way that could affect how things are in the field? Well, maybe ask what job titles are similar to yours that may not be obviously known, that create spots for people with the same kind of background. You could directly ask about recommendations. They have recommendations for you. And again, asking for referrals. So there's a lot that can happen with an informational interview. And I want you to know that you're going in there with a plan because you have an answer to the research. You're going to work on asking questions related to the research question for the study. But at the same time, there are all these other components that you have to think about, because this is someone that could influence you. This is someone that could be a good connector person for you. And if it's not in the current job, it could just be in this current research study to connect with another person or with another person. So these mentor kinds of people, I hope, can bring you some value. And I also hope that it helps us as we study along and work through the informational interviews together in class.